Hello everyone, how are you all doing? I hope all of you are doing great. So in this video, we are going to talk about quality of service classes in Kubernetes. So in Kubernetes, quality of service refers to the classification of pods based on the resources they require and how they are managed by the Kubernetes scheduler. So the quality of service classes determines the priority and eviction behavior of pods within the cluster. When a node runs out of the resources, Kubernetes will first evict the best effort pods running on that node, followed by burstable and finally the guaranteed pods. Okay, so there are three types of QoS classes. One is guaranteed, burstable, and then the best effort. Okay, so now we are going to see one by one what these three classes means in Kubernetes and their demos. Okay, so QoS class of guaranteed. So for a pod to be given a QoS class of guaranteed, every container in that pod must have a memory limit and a memory request. Okay, so whatever number of containers we have within that pod definition file, it should have memory limit and memory request. Similarly, that every container in that pod, it should have that CPU limit and then the CPU request. Now, these two parameters, that is limit and request for both the memory and CPU, it should be equal. Okay, so here if you see limits we have defined as 200 megabytes and request is defined as same number, that is 200 megabytes. Similarly, we have defined the CPU for this particular container, that is 700 millicores as limits and 700 millicores as request. So if these criteria will be fulfilled within that particular pod definition file for all of the containers, then that particular pod will be given the QoS class of guaranteed. Okay, so now we are going to see the demo of this particular QoS class of guaranteed. I am in my VS Code window and I have this pod definition file where I have defined both the limits and request for this container. And if you look at carefully over here, so both the memory limits and then the memory requests are same for this container, that is 200 megabytes. Similarly, if you look at the CPU limits and then the CPU request, they both are same, that is 700 millicores. So now let's create this pod and see what QoS class basically Kubernetes gives to this particular pod. Okay, so if you see this pod definition file, I have defined the namespace as QoS-ns. So I will be creating this pod inside this namespace. In my terminal window. So let's just check that whether I do have this QoS-ns namespace here or not. So let me just check. So kubectl get ns. So yeah, I have this namespace already here. So I have created 3 minutes 26 seconds back almost. So if you see, you can check the age here. So let me just create the pod and see what kind of QoS class Kubernetes is giving to that particular pod. So here I have already this pod definition file. So let me just show you. So if you see here, I have this QoS guaranteed.yml. So let me just show you the content of this particular file. Okay. So if you see here, so this under this pod definition file, we have defined both the limits and request for this memory and CPU, and they all are equal. So if you check the memory limits and memory request, they both are 200 megabytes, and similarly CPU limits and CPU request, they are 700 millicores. Okay, let me just create this particular pod. So kubectl apply hyphen f, and I'm going to give this particular pod definition. I'm going to pass this particular pod definition file. So let me just give that. Okay, So we have already created this pod, so let's just check whether this pod has been created or not. Okay, so I'm just going to see kubectl get pods -n, and then I'm going to pass this namespace where this pod is residing. Okay, so yeah, this pod has already been created, and you can see the age 16 seconds back it got created. So now let me just describe this pod and check what is the QoS class Kubernetes has given to this, or Kubernetes has assigned to this particular pod. Okay, so let me just describe this pod. So kubectl describe pod, and we are going to give this pod name. So this is QoS guaranteed. Okay, and I'm going to pass the namespace as well where this pod is residing. Okay, so if you see here this line, okay, so Kubernetes has given a QoS class of guaranteed to this pod because we have defined both the limits and request, and both the limits and request are for memory and CPU, they are equal. So now we will move to the next QoS class, that is burstable. Okay, so a pod is given a QoS class of burstable if that pod does not meet the criteria for QoS class of guaranteed, and at least one container in that particular pod has a memory or CPU request or limit. Okay, so when in that pod definition file, whatever number of containers we have, so at least one container should have either memory or CPU request or limits. Okay, so here I have this pod definition file, and if you see, I have defined memory limits and request for this particular container, but I have not defined the CPU limits or request. Okay, let's see the demo of this particular QoS class of burstable, and check what kind of QoS class has been given to this particular pod by Kubernetes. So here again, I am in my terminal window. So I have already created this namespace for the earlier demo of QoS class of guaranteed. So now let's just create this pod and see what QoS class Kubernetes is giving to this particular pod. So I already have this pod definition file here. So let me just show you once here. Okay, so let me just cat for this particular file. So QoS. Okay, so here I have this pod definition file, and if you see here, I have defined only the memory limits and request for this particular pod. So let us just create this pod and check what is the class QoS class Kubernetes is given to this particular pod. Okay, so let me just create this pod quickly. So I'm just going to pass this definition file here. Okay, so yeah, this pod has been created, and let me just quickly see. Yeah, so this pod is running just now 6 seconds back, and let me just describe this pod. Okay, so that we'll see what is the QoS class Kubernetes has given to this particular pod. So let me just change this name here. So this is QoS burst. So if you see here this tab, okay, this line. So Kubernetes has given the burstable class to this particular pod because we have defined only the limits for this particular container within the pod. Okay, so now we are going to move to the next and last QoS class, that is best effort, QoS class of best effort. So for a pod to be given a QoS class of best effort, so the containers in the pod must not have any memory or CPU limits or request. Okay, so this is the criteria for this QoS class of best effort. So you have the pod definition file, and whatever number of containers you have defined in that particular pod definition file, it should not have either memory or CPU limits. So here I have this pod definition file, and you can see we have not defined any kind of memory or uh, memory limit or request or CPU limit or request here. Okay, so now let's check out the demo for this particular class and see what is the class given to this particular pod by Kubernetes. Okay, so here I am again in my terminal, and I already have this pod definition file here. So let me just show you once here. Okay, so I have this QoS underscore best effort.yml. Okay, so let me just do cat, and you will see here. So this is the pod definition file, and I have not defined any kind of request or limits for this particular pod. So let us just quickly create this pod and check what is the QoS class Kubernetes is giving to this particular pod. Okay, so let me just create this pod quickly, and I'm going to pass this pod definition file here. So that is QoS. Okay, so this pod has been created already. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, so you can see this pod has been created and it's running perfectly fine. It's okay. Now I'm going to describe this pod and check what is the QoS class Kubernetes has given to this particular pod. So let me just describe this pod quickly. So the pod name is QoS best effort. So I'm just going to change this name here. Okay. So I have described this pod, and if you check here, okay, this line. So Kubernetes has given to Kubernetes has given the best effort class QoS class to this particular pod because we have not defined any kind of limits or request for this particular pod definition file. Okay, so that's all for this video, and if you like this video, please give a thumbs up. If you have any kind of questions, please do let me know in the comment box. I will try to answer as quickly as possible. Okay, so till then, stay safe, stay healthy. I will see you all in my next video.